ladies and gentlemen. We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. This is your first time tuning in. Welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak to transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve, so you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We are going solo today. My guest had a last minute change here this morning. But it's all right. I've had this happen. I've been doing this for 6 years and have done over 1,500 of these. So I never have a shortage of things to talk about. And I plan for this stuff, right? So today we will be doing the market analysis here with powered by my friends over at DAT. And then we're going to go through what I have found success in recently in building my brokerage up from a sales perspective, how it's changed out there, and what a couple of small little changes you guys could possibly make to your outreach to help you guys get on people's radars. So we're going to get that, and that's going to be the premise of our show today is freight sales, business development, and all that stuff, and what's working out here. But like I had mentioned, you guys, we got to do This Week in Freight, powered by my friends over at DAT. You guys, this is a 3 times a week market analysis, all right? This isn't me telling you what to quote. This is me helping you read lanes and actually deliver consistent and stable pricing to your customers out there. Because, let's be honest, it's never as volatile as people out there want to make it sound. All right, I'm not trying to sell you guys anything. I'm just a dude who actually moves freight, and I've been doing it for a very long time, and it's a lot more stable than most people think. So today's lane is Houston, Texas, Omaha, Nebraska reefer, Midwest reefer. And I personally think the Midwest is the hottest market out there. It seems like, at least from the carriers that we talk to and that we work with, they're loving the Midwest right now, loving the Midwest. And then it's if you look at it from a fuel perspective, it's cheaper to fill up in the Midwest than it is on the West Coast by far. So it's they're going to stay out there and get that money. But, again, if you've never read a lane before, the first thing I always look at is miles, all right? We're at essentially 900 miles on this lane. So again, the days of the week are going to matter. This is not the best Friday to Monday or Thursday to Monday lane. A lot of that has to do with the fact that over the weekend, people like miles. I've just found that 900 to 1,000 mile mark does get a little bit more resistance from the carrier industry on if they want to take that load, unless they live up in that area where the destination is. And then it's a great load to get them back home. But if you're out there sourcing capacity on this lane, you're going to probably see an increase in rates during that time. And again, it's just how long they have to hold on to it. But Monday to Wednesday, this is a phenomenal lane for your carrier partners out there. But, I chose this lane specifically because this lane's dropped. All right. Everybody out there that I have seen, again, I don't see everything, but I see rates are through the roof. Fuel is through the roof. Fuel is expensive out there. There's no trucks, all of this stuff. This lane is, from my perspective, telling the opposite, right? It's dropped. It's dropped in price. It had its peak in May, as you can see here, and it stayed stable through July, and then it's dropped. All right. And is this a sign that it's going to continue to drop? I don't know. It's too early to be seen. But over these last couple of days, the rate has gone down out there. So again, this whole selling on fear, essentially, it's not going to cut it, right? Because the market will inevitably correct itself. Things will stabilize. I think it is stabilized out there from a capacity standpoint. Now, do I move seen this lane perform the exact same way that it did in 2025 from a pricing perspective, right? Albeit the rates are a little bit higher right now. So again, you need to look at the lanes you're moving on a 12-month basis, because we went from ample capacity to a little bit tighter capacity between last year and this year. Rates have skyrocketed, as we've seen on certain lanes. But, again, the lanes performing the same. And that's what I want you guys to pay attention to now more than ever, because and we're going to get into this into the bulk of the show on how I personally prospect. But we legitimately need to find that voice of reason, that voice of consistency out there, because Not a lot of people sell like that, right? Not a lot of people put their customers' best interests first. And we can be kind of that anomaly out there in the market. But this lane, it's dropping in price, it's stable. And if you pay attention to 2025, it's probably going to dip again through September, it looks like. And then it'll jump up in October throughout the end of the year as we get closer to the holidays. But this lane is performing the way it does, albeit at a higher price point this year. So that is This Week in Freight, though, powered by my friends over at DAT, you guys. And again, if you want your lane broken down on the show, I just need you guys to email my team, podcast@thefreightcoach.com. I need shipping city, delivery city, trailer type. That's all I need. You round up to the nearest city, throw me off. I don't care. All I want to help you guys do is understand how freight markets actually work and how you can take this data, take this information, provide it to your customers and win some more business, okay? So like I had said, today is going to be a solo show. We are going to be talking about business development. There is two very different roles that we're talking about here when it comes to the hunter, i.e. business development, sales, bringing an account from a cold call to onboarded, and account management. Two very different roles, albeit very, very important roles. If you've never cold called consistently, if you've never prospected somebody, if you've never built a customer profile, you're not a sales rep, in my opinion. You're an account manager, which is great. Different skill set that comes along with that. But again, we got to kind of separate the roles. And if you're in one of those positions like I'm in and you're building your company, you're kind of doing everything right now. But it's one of those things where it's like, how is the landscape different today than it was pre-COVID? Or, in the past, it's like, I look at this where it's like, you used to be able, and I know I've said this on the show before. So if you've been listening to me for a while, you might say I'm repeating myself here, and it's kind of true. But like, you used to be able to make some generic phone calls, right? You used to, get a hold of the shipping manager kind of easy, not like it was like shooting fish in a barrel or anything like that. But you used to be able to, if you could complete a sentence and have a meaningful conversation with a transportation manager back in the day, you would get a prove-it shipment fairly with like little resistance out there, right? It might take a little bit of time, but you could piece together a couple of decent sentences and get in front of somebody and, move a couple of shipments. And as long as you backed up what you said in your cold call, like, you could build a very sustainable book of business in not so long of a time. But, in today's environment, it's just completely different out there. And what I mean by that is like, you cannot make a generic cold call anymore. You cannot just call people for the sake of calling them to, essentially say, hey, I'm a broker. Can I move your freight? Or I got trucks sitting outside your facility right now. And, can I quote your freight and stuff like that? And, it's like you can't cold call somebody and say, hey, I know capacity's tight out there, because capacity is not that tight. All right. Not everywhere. Right. Again, there are examples where I'm sure you could find that capacity's tight, but like overall, those days are dead. And then it's like, I look at it where it's like, they receive any shipper out there. And again, I have a secret shipper audience that watches this show. They don't want to, like, they want to come on the show if they wouldn't get bombarded with emails and DMs and everything else from people out there. Like the shipper community truly does want to help. It's just us brokers and sales reps are our own worst enemy, and they would take the value they were given and then just fucking pepper them day in and day out for eternity about stuff. But it's like that, they tell me. They're like, I receive so much that like I can't even keep up. I had one buddy of mine, he had said, he's like, I had to turn off connection requests. He's like, I couldn't even connect with anybody anymore just to connect with them, because it would be a pitch slap after pitch slap after pitch slap. And there was like, I turned it off. He's like, I have so many outstanding ones. I have so many outstanding DMs. He's like, if you didn't have my cell number, and because like we text and, we'll talk on the phone and stuff like that. He's like, if you didn't have that, he's like, I would never, ever be able to communicate with you. So it's like, that's the amount of stuff that's being thrown at them at any given moment. And that's not even to include all the AI dialers that are out there, all the bots that are DMing and everything else, right? So there's so much information where it's like, how, like, when you do get that at bat, when you do get that conversation, how do you separate yourself out there, right? Where it's like, because if you're going in and going like, oh, rates are going through the roof and everything else, I mean, that's a lie because the rates have stabilized out there. Like we break it down 3 times a week on this show through a lot of major markets, and the last 90 days have shown a lot of stability overall. Again, I know there are pockets that you could call me out on and be like, "Oh, that's BS." We've had, but that's not like you can't go in there. You have to and need to sell on stability, consistency, and everything else. But most importantly, if you can't do something, just say you can't do it. But it's like I look at it where, if we're looking at how to get in there, right? How do you separate yourself from the pack? I'm like I've talked about often, I'm all about the niche. I understand that like when you're starting out, you might have to cast a wider net. Maybe you've never moved freight before, or you were a carrier rep and now you're trying your hand at sales and everything else. So you're starting. So I understand why you might want to cast a wide net out there and go after a bunch of stuff, because, again, something might hit. I don't know. But I look at it where it's like you could legitimately become a subject matter expert in whatever mode, van, reefer, flatbed, and then get into a subcategory of it, right? Where it's like, hey, I just moved dairy products. I got buddies who just move produce. I have another friend of mine who just moves proteins, right? Chicken, beef, stuff like that. That's all he moves. And he's got a very successful book of business and a brokerage built off of that stuff, right? So it's like you can go in and niche down, and it's like you could legitimately take the market and lane analysis that I do. We post it separately on our YouTube. You could download it, upload it into AI, say transcribe this into a market report that I could send out to my prospects. There's some free game for you, right? I'm not like all of that stuff's out there. So there's so much information that is at your disposal now where it's like that's the main driver on why the generic sales days are done, right? Like they're dead. You have to go in there with a lot of information. And it's like, again, even if you don't want to take what I talk about here on the show, use DAT to your to your advantage if you're utilizing them inside of your operations. They have a ton of data that you can go and add value to your prospects and your customers, know more about the regions that they're moving their freight on. And again, like if you can afford lead generation software, I personally use a company called Optimus. Right, I've had them on the show in the past. They're a customer of mine. I pay them, or I'm a customer of theirs. Excuse me. There's so much data that is inside of that system where it's like I can get down to a granular lane analysis based on volume that shipper moves out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, for example. There is so much information that is out there that you do not need to be vague in your approach, and you can be very direct. And again, value add, sell that market intelligence, know exactly how these lanes perform as you're going in there and talking to them about it. But, again, it's like, how do you get noticed? Because that's the hardest part about everything in the business development process. It's not about when you get a meeting with them and you can actually sit down because you have time to prepare, but it's cutting through the noise to get the right person, to make sure you're prospecting the right individual out there. Because, one challenge that I would say most of us are faced with today that might not have been that big of a deal, not saying people didn't change jobs in the past, is like people are jumping ship at a rapid pace compared to the way things were, right? Like people used to work at the same company for 25 years, 30 years and retire and all of that. It's like a rarity that you find that in today's environment. So it's like when you're going out there, one of those things is maybe your first couple of calls is like just finding out who you actually need to speak with, because at times that person leaves and you don't want to be prospecting the wrong individual. So that's where I see an environment where, like, what we personally utilize, where cold calling does still add value is we're kind of verifying information, right? Where we're going in there, we're asking to speak with such and such, department, transportation, logistics, supply chain, whatever that looks like. Maybe they have that option out there. And then there's a name on the voicemail. That's like some of the most valuable market intelligence or data that you can like get through a cold call in today's environment, because people are changing jobs. You might be emailing John Smith at abcshipper.com, and that person's been out of that role for 6 months now, but that person's email address is still receiving emails. You'd think people would cut off emails when they leave, but they don't, right? So that could be a way that you could leverage that to get the right information. Now, utilize multiple channels. Like I know this is going to sound contradictory to what I just said, but not every shipping manager out there has blocked and shut off all notifications and connection requests and all that. That's not the case. Where it's like, go out there, connect with them on LinkedIn, but don't pitch them as soon as they accept your connection request. Utilize content to your advantage, right? Maybe you're out there, you're utilizing some of the data that you see that, DAT posts or other companies posts out there. Repurpose that content, share it out there to your network. If your prospect or customer is connected with you on social media, they might not be getting that data. They might not be getting that information. Because frankly, you guys, they're a manufacturer of whatever product or widget that it is. They're not a transportation company. That's why they work with us. So utilize this data and add value to them. You can add value to somebody's organization without asking for their business to stay in front of them, because, again, I've seen these are some of the longest sales cycles that I've ever been a part of in my life. Even when I do break free and start connecting with the transportation manager, and there a lot of it is always like, hey Chris, like we're good, like we want to stay in contact with you, but like we're not making any changes at this time, right? So it's like, hey, how do you add value to somebody without asking for their business? How do you stay present? How do you stay in front of them without overbearing and without sounding like another broken record of a sales rep? There's a ton of free resources that are out there, you guys. Utilize it to your advantage and just add value to the market. Another thing that, we are looking at now, where it's like, all right, so we cut through the noise, utilize lead generation software if you can afford it, utilize LinkedIn, connect with your prospects. If you do cold call, sometimes just getting that person's information is the biggest win, even though they didn't answer the phone. Maybe you use that old email domain, like Kara Smith said when she was on the phone here, or not on the phone, on the show the other week, right? Again, buy her book, Revenue Engine. I don't make any money off of this, you guys. I just recommend the book because it has helped me a lot. But once you own that domain, i.e., you get that email address, and you can start just changing the name, updating it once you got the new point of contact, and start prospecting that way if they're not answering the phone. Because like, it's a rarity, you guys, to get somebody on the phone. If you're going to make 100 calls, you might get 10 people on the phone all day long, and that's including gatekeepers. So keep that in mind as you're going. That's why you have to use the multi-channel approach, because this is how things are going to be done today, right? And again, the faster you can prove you're an actual human being, the better off you're going to be. I look at also today's landscape that you're seeing out there. Not every shipper is going to care about this or even understand that this is a potential problem, but how do you turn risk and vetting into a selling feature, right? Like, you're getting set up with somebody, or you're talking to your prospect now. Now you've moved past that, hey, we know who we are. You've been noticed. They've replied. And the question's been posed. And this is one that I've been posed with lately. How are you vetting your carriers? Plain and simple. That was the question. How are you vetting your carriers? And we went through the process that we utilize out there, because it's the shipper community is on notice right now with some of these lawsuits. Carrier in the booking process, the better the deterrent becomes on who's real and who's not out there. Because I've just found over the course of my career, the right carriers want you to be detail oriented as a broker. So again, make your safety department your secret sales weapon, because I think the larger the shipper, not everybody, but like, this is going to be more and more of a requirement here moving forward, because their legal and risk team internally at that manufacturer is going to be looking at all of that stuff coming up here. So utilize that to your advantage, right? And then I also, again, we were talking about this the other day with Tom Dean at Renaissance on Monday. Go back and listen to Monday's show. you know, like being talking to them and providing, being open to giving them feedback on their facilities. And what do I mean by that? Um, a lot of shippers, manufacturers very much care about the efficiency of their operations, dwell times, and all of that stuff out there. And when you're in that conversation piece about things, I have been told by numerous large shippers of mine throughout my career, because they're like, when they utilize third party warehousing and everything else, they're like, you need to request attention. You need to let us know about these things, because we do not want our brand to have a negative association out there in the market that deters capacity from coming in and picking up their freight and delivering it out to their customers. So have those open conversations with them in the prospecting phase of it. And then so another thing too, objections. It's always going to be a part of this. Excuse me. Here's just what thing I've put inside of my company. If we cold call somebody or if we prospect somebody and they say remove us from your list, I'm removing them from our outreach. I'm not going to fight that uphill battle. Some people view it as a challenge. I view it as a waste of time personally. So if it's remove us from your list, I'm removing them from your list. I'm not going to call them back in 6 months or anything like that. Or if they're like, we don't work with brokers. Okay, cool. But if they're, because here's one of the most common objections that we get out there is, hey, we already have 5 brokers or 10 brokers on our roster. Our rates are locked in, all of that stuff. And my pivot in that exact moment is I'm like, hey, I completely respect that you have set up providers that are working with you right now. I don't want to replace anybody. I'm just looking at how we can, be their eyes, a double set of eyes out there in the market. Because like we go after shippers that we run these lanes constantly, right? Because we built that up. Where to me, it's like, how do we stay in front of them? If they have their current their current provider set, everything's good, cool. You're like, hey, I know you're running this lane right now. I could let you know, send you that market intelligence that I was talking about. And, so if just to kind of check what's going on, to keep a pulse on the open market out there, because at times some people don't want to bring news to people's attention out there. But, I also look at it where I'll also pivot it like this, just be like, hey, I completely respect that you have these longstanding relationships. And I truly feel this way as a business owner. I ask them, what are your current providers doing right? What are they doing for you that doesn't like push you to take a call like this, or, look at new providers? Feedback of any kind, you guys, is the most valuable information out there. And then, you get to start building a profile on like what's important to the shipper community. Maybe to them, it's updating their TMS, right? Like they're an enterprise shipper. They have a TMS. They need that stuff updated every single time a driver arrives, departs. They need bill of ladings updated right away, tender acceptance, something along those lines, right? And then you can start building a profile behind these prospects for when you do eventually onboard somebody, exactly where to hit the ground running with them and to do what potentially others aren't, right? Because when they're telling you this information, right, they're telling you tender acceptance, to updating the TMS, communication, that's the most, like, this is what our network does great. Then, when you do get that call, one of those key 3 pieces of information they gave you, one of their current or multiple of their current providers are or were failing on. And that's where you need to step up and separate yourself with right away. So it's like these objections are always going to be a part of it. Or here's another one too that you get. Maybe you're quoting the loads. You've got past that point. You haven't broke through. You haven't got set up yet. And then they bring up price, right? Where it's like, I like to set the tone. Like they're going to come back. You're going to provide them a quote, and they're going to come back and say you're $250 higher than our current network. I always hold firm on my pricing. I do that because like the rates I provide, I know for a fact are in line with the market, because there's a ton of data that's out there. And I have just found at times there are people who want to see how much can I get this person to negotiate, right? So your first quote or your fifth quote, they might push back and be like, hey, you're higher than everybody else, because they're wanting to see how much lower they can get you. But for me, the quote is the quote. All right. I like, my rate is my rate out there when I'm in that business development phase of things. And I'm trying to set the tone that, hey, the rates that I provide are the rates, because when you do eventually win, and you'll eventually win freight from this person, then they know that every time you provide the rate, that's the rate that gets the job done, right? Because your trucks are going to show up on time, deliver on time. You're going to have all that proactive communication. So again, everybody's got their own strategy. Everybody's got their own tendencies on how they want to do it. This is just what works for me. And that's just the tone that I like to set out there. But, I look at it, you guys, just audit your pitch as we're kind of wrapping up here. Audit your pitch. What can you do differently out there? How can you sound like nobody else? Because everybody kind of sounds one and the same. And that's why you're probably not getting much traction out there. And I need to heed to my own advice at times on that. Again, offer to provide data, free information, free value to them in any way, shape, or form you can to stay on their radar, because you know what? They might not need you. All right. And that's fine. Stay in front of them. If this isn't just a job to you, if this is a career, if this is a calling, like it is for me, I love this industry, I'm not leaving this industry, then how do I stay in front of somebody? Because it might take 5 years. I'm committed to that. I plan on being around. So, do that, bring it up, follow up, you guys, follow up, follow up, follow up. That's where it's always is. Everybody is good until they're not. All right. Who are they going to think of when their current network fails? Are they going to think of the person who's been respectfully staying in front of them? Probably. So take that for what it's worth. Ask for feedback from your current customers. What are you doing right? What would you like to see improve? And utilize that in your pitch, you guys. There's a ton of different ways, and I kind of cram this into 30 minutes. But again, you guys, sell on value, sell on consistency, sell on being the subject matter expert that you are. Let everybody else sell on fear. That might work for a season, but over the long term, your customers and manufacturers are looking for stable providers who can bring them market insights, market analysis, and take care of them. Because again, my company, I am a direct representation of my customer out there when we're delivering to their customer, i.e. the receiver, in more environments. So that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. We do got guests coming on Thursday and Friday. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, do me a solid. Subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there. And if you're feeling really ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang. Window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back.